Hello and welcome to the Politics Show on Sangat TV. As you are aware, we've got an election coming up on Thursday the 8th of June, so please don't waste your vote. Please make sure you do vote on election day. And to bring you a bit more information about the general election, today I've got Max McLouglin from the Green Party. Hello Max.
Hello, Jack.
So can you tell me which constituency you're standing for?
I'm standing in Solihull, which is where I was born and raised.
Okay, that's great. So tell us, why are you standing and why do you think your party has the best interest for the UK and obviously yourself for your constituency?
Well, I mean, I'm standing in Solihull. So on Solihull we have 10 councillors on Solihull Council, so the Greens are the formal opposition to the Conservative Party. The Conservative do have many more voters there, and they have an MP in both Meriden and in Solihull. But I think at the moment one thing that's become quite clear in politics recently is that we do need to hold politicians to account. And this is in Europe, in the UK and everywhere in the world. I think making sure that politicians do question their decisions is important. So I think it's important we have more Green voices in Parliament, and also that the Conservative MPs don't just feel like they have their votes taken for granted. They should need to feel like they represent the people of the area as well and listen to them.
Right. Can I ask you, what made you get into politics?
But my journey to politics has been quite a long one. But one of the things that really pushed me over the edge. I lived in China for 5 years,
oh,
just
wow.
under 5 years.
Oh, whereabouts?
In Chongqing, which is it's a province in its own right. It's a city of 9 million people. Wow. That not many people have heard of, but it used to be part of Sichuan province, and I owned and ran a business over there. And it's really interesting because you can't avoid politics in China, but there's some things you can and can't say. Yeah. And so I think I came back to the UK feeling like there are lots of things I wanted to say. There were some things that I thought actually the Chinese were doing better things in politics than we're doing here, and there's some things that we didn't see. But I think actually seeing the impact on the environment over there, seeing it firsthand and breathing the environment, it meant that I needed to come back and say something on that.
I think I visited Shenzhen in China. I worked there for a bit, but what I did notice was their work ethics were amazing. Yeah. The hours that they work. Yeah. Yeah, they're in at 8 and they don't finish till 9, 10. And some of the place where I worked, they actually slept overnight. Yeah. They stayed at the company offices. They woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. They all did yoga, had a breakfast paid for by the company, and went straight into work. Yeah,
and it's the same in the factories as well. There are people who, in Chongqing's famous for, it's called bang bang men, which is stick men. You see these people carrying, fridges and TVs, and there's some real strength, not just in the physicality, but in the approach to their work.
Right. Can I ask you, have you got a current job at present, or did you leave that to pursue politics?
So I closed the business in China, and when I came back here, I was in the process of setting up another business in Morocco, and I was volunteering for the Green Party, and they asked me if I'd get a bit more involved, and I have got more involved. I got elected as a councillor, and I took this as an opportunity to carry on postgraduate studies at Warwick as well.
Okay. So, what do you think the Sikh community bring to the UK?
I think firstly, every community brings something to the UK, and I think we shouldn't necessarily be saying any one community is better than the others. But I think the uniqueness of the Sikhs, firstly, their approach, in terms of their religion, their value for other people, other views, and for the environment itself are one of the things that are closest to my heart. I mean, I'm also, my mother was born in Poland, so I think that the interaction of lots of different cultures and lots of different understandings of the world, how we get to a better understanding and to a closer truth.
Okay, great. So how is your party best placed to serve the Sikh community?
Well, as I said, I think our position, our values are probably closest represented to some of the teachings in Sikhism, in terms of respect for other people and respect for the environment, and so I think that there is quite a lot of similarity in that. The other thing with the Greens is that we do respect everyone's needs, and we respect the future of our planet, and as well as that of our country. So I do feel that the Greens have a close affinity with the Sikhs, and we're the people who are looking to have more inclusive society and actually respect all the people who at times have been marginalised. And I think as a result of Brexit, there's been an increase in some of the hate crime that different minorities have experienced in the UK. We've been very progressive in the language that we've used. We're concerned about some of the anti-immigration language that's coming on, and I'm a descendant of an immigrant, and so I feel that language hurts me, and that's why I'm with the Green Party and standing up for those people who might feel marginalised.
Do you think? That's a new thing. I mean, do you think if anyone speaks about immigration, it's all automatically classified as racism? Because at the end of the day, like you're saying, you're the green planet, your resources are the planet. What about the resources of the UK? Do you not think that, like last year, we had 308,000 immigrants coming to the country? I think 177,000 were from outside the EU, and I think about 135,000 were from inside the EU. Do you not think that obviously that brings a big strain on schooling, on the NHS, on housing for sure, because these people need to be housed as well with their families and children? That I know you can't speak about immigration, and I think Labour tried to put it somewhat like they've got an open door policy, and that they won't have any real control on that. It's not in their manifesto. But especially, see, even as a Sikh community, I think it affects us, because a lot of Sikhs have lost their jobs that have been taken over by EU nationals that have come for these lower paid minimum wage jobs. So I understand what you're saying about you've got integration and stuff like that. But how do we integrate certain communities that seem to struggle to fit into Western values?
Well, I think there's two sides to that. Firstly, addressing the first question when we're talking about immigration, we need to have an open and responsible conversation about immigration. I think one of the problems that we've got is that we're not having dialogue, we're having monologue that's very opposed and divisive as well in some of the language which is used. So when we're looking at the drivers of immigration, I mean, climate change is one of the big drivers. One thing that most people won't be aware of because it's been pushed off the agenda by lots of other issues. But between 2008 and 2014, there were 23.5 million climate refugees every year in between those years on the planet. Now, the issues that have been going on in Syria, we're talking about refugees, and we're talking about migrants from that area of the Middle East. Some of that has been caused by the tensions of people migrating into the cities as a result of, habitat, the places where they live not becoming so habitable. So there are economic reasons that people move, but some of the reasons why the factors that lead into that are climate related. So we need to have an open dialogue about what's going on there, what's the UK's role and responsibility in advocating positive change towards that. But then we also need to look as well. There are some uncomfortable narratives that have come out recently, where we're saying that immigrants you're putting pressure on our public services. The reality is that immigrants are paying more into the system than is being taken out. We had a population boom, the baby boomers, and I'm not blaming them in any way, but that has meant that we have lots of people who are taking a little bit more out of the system now than they're able to put in, and we need to look at how we balance that. But health hasn't been properly funded. We're seeing real term cuts in schooling, so we can't necessarily lay blame at the foot of immigrants who are basically staffing our hospitals.
I know you say they're staffing the hospital, and obviously you've got workers that come through, but then obviously the family comes through as well. Say for example, in certain areas in Birmingham, in Coventry, in Wolverhampton, for example, you probably won't see this in Solihull, but you have schools where the English as a second language is around about 60%. So them schools obviously struggle, and so in Solihull you have schools that are always outstanding because they don't have that pressure on there, and so it affects the English-speaking children, the people that have been born and bred here, where the teachers can't teach to more than half of the class, and I think that's maybe where immigration might have hurt other people. You've seen with the Labour vote, how many Labour voters have voted UKIP now, that they've just sort of had enough. So that's the problem I see with the left side of politics is great, but to a point, maybe.
I think just picking up on what you said there, I mean, there are some issues that we do need to look at in parts, and then there's some that we need to look on a more holistic level. Now, if we're looking at the localised impact, I think what has happened around the UK, there are lots of areas which have not benefited from immigration. They've been net losers, and there are. I mean, at the moment, there's lots. One of the good things that we have now is we have lots of information, so we can see the situation. But there's lots of parts of the West Midlands which have been completely left behind. Now, Solihull, the place where I'm a councillor, in the north of the borough, which is in Merredin constituency, that part of the borough versus the area where I'm representing, the life expectancy is 10 years different, which is, and people in the north of the borough are going to have 15 years of disability at the end of their life, as opposed to 5 years of disability in the south of the borough. Now, that level of inequality is something that is not to do with immigration. These are English-born people predominantly.
Was the borough that you're representing a Labour borough?
It was never. It never was a Labour borough. The Labour vote in the north of the borough has moved over to the Greens, because I think there has been a problem with some of the traditional politics of votes being taken for granted, not addressing the issues, and people turning up for a couple of weeks before an election, and then basically thinking that was it for however many years, not turning up to meetings to represent them at the council, or doing the same for them in Parliament. I think that's been a bit of a problem with politics, and I don't think the snap election has necessarily helped that. So I'm not saying that a snap election it should never happen. I'm saying that in this instance, I think it means that it reinforces that view that politicians just turn up for a vote when an election is around.
Can I ask you, the Green Party stated that much of Labour's manifesto now was taken from your manifesto in 2015. Do you want to explain your manifesto more? Because I know for the Green Party you don't get the publicity that Labour and Conservative, partly Lib Dems get. So can you explain your manifesto a bit better, and how the environment is at the heart of it?
Yeah, and I think, well, I think, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and there are elements of the manifesto from 2015 that Labour have taken. One of the things which got the most press and most publicity was about taking some of the railway lines back into public ownership. Part of the reason for that is that there are huge subsidies given to some of the private companies where the lines are marginally working or not working. And in those instances where we have taken them back into public control, they've been successful. So there are examples of that around the UK, where we have got some of the best railway lines in public hands. So we're saying that at the moment we're paying out when it doesn't work, and we're paying out when it does work. So we're looking at ways where some of those licences could come back into public ownership. Now, the Labour have taken that, and I think that's great. The other thing is they
want the whole renationalisation. They want to bring it back to the 70s with British Rail.
Well, I think there's I mean, I don't think that would necessarily work as a policy. If they've read the whole of the Green Manifesto, what we were saying is that at the moment, we have train operating companies, and we have Network Rail, which operate the infrastructure. So when those licences expire, we're saying that rather than them being renewed or put out to tender, we offer them to franchise. Some of those can come back into public ownership. So it doesn't put an expense there. It offers an opportunity to mean that we have better control over making sure that railway fares are affordable, and we can make sure that we have reliable services as well. So I think there's a very good argument for that. How it's done is what, hopefully Labour would have read a bit more of the manifesto. The other thing is that in the health service, I mean, they're talking about bringing sort of an end to some of the PFI that's in there. Now, we were very sceptical about private investment and private involvement in the health service. Now, PFI was an arrangement which was drawn up by the Conservatives and then implemented by the Labour Party. It's one of the reasons why we have so much debt at the moment that we're using to justify lots of cuts that are impacting some of the poorest in the country. So we're saying that actually health should be about health. It shouldn't be about making a profit for a private company. I think we can look at taking some of the some of the profit motive out of the health service at the heart of it, and trying to look at how do we make our health service back where it was as one of the most efficient and one of the best operating health services in the world.
So great. What would be a good result for you come election day for the Greens?
Well, in Solihull, or
Solihull,
obviously, when you invite me back as the MP for Solihull, and I'd be very happy to come back. And I think there's one of the things that I do want to say is that I'm not gonna do what some parties are saying. So we're gonna be in power in June, because I think you and I both know that we're not going to have the majority of MPs in Parliament then. I think one thing that we have done, in the same way that UKIP have claimed victory over getting the referendum and winning the referendum, our job isn't done. Our job is about influencing policy. Now, we're not a lobbying group. We are trying to do that work from in Parliament. In local elections, the number of councillors we have around the country is increasing. We're a party that's still on the start of its journey, and we are a party which is most concerned with the future. So I know that whether I get elected or not, I'm going to carry on with this, because I think this issue of how do we leave a planet in a better state for our children than we received it in is an issue which goes on forever. And I'm sure long after I'm gone as well, that green politics will still be at the heart of English and British politics.
Okay, just on the green politics that you've got. On a personal note, I've got a plug-in electric car. Yeah. Good
on you.
which I chose for the two reasons. Yeah. The government taxation, anything under 49 grams, you only pay 5. Now it's 7% tax. Yeah. So I think I'm only paying about £900 a year, £2,000 a year tax, instead of a diesel which would be £2,500. The government also gave £5,000 towards it, because it was an electric car as well. But the issue I have now, so I'm living in Coventry and I'm coming up to Birmingham Studios. It would be great if I could charge my car for free, or at least have a nationalised service that I subscribe to, because there's several independent ones, and one here near the studios that I could charge in. And it would mean 16 miles coming here, 16 miles going back would be on electric only, without me starting the engine. How can the Greens sort of push that through? Because everyone's got to get out of diesels. It's a dirty car, it's a dirty solution. It should never. I just don't understand why. I think it was a Labour Party that said it was an environmentally friendly solution when it was the worst thing possible.
I think as well, we need to be honest that there was also the emissions scandal which happened with Volkswagen. You've described with your story and your experience of electric vehicle, which is the same story that we're seeing with renewables as well, in producing the energy. We're talking as a holistic picture, that we're not talking about saying that everyone needs to go out and buy an electric vehicle. We're saying that it needs to be cheaper and easier for people if they are going to make that switch, because we're all people. I'm someone who I had a diesel car from the point where I thought that it was the least environmentally damaging.
The government the government said it was the
consumers. It's not just the responsibility of the government. It is also manufacturers. Now, one of the things that I do say is that in relation to Volkswagen, we've seen executives in that company who've made a willful decision to deceive people. They've made profits off that, and I think that if companies do that, there needs to be proper action taken against them, because their misleading has influenced government, but it's also influenced lots of people who spent lots of money on something which has caused lots of us to have breathing problems. Air quality around the West Midlands is deteriorating, and part of that is as a result of public transport. More people are owning vehicles, so we do need to look at ways in which we improve that. Electric vehicles do form part of that solution, but we can't expect electric vehicles to be the only part of the solution. Now, hopefully businesses and places of work will offer people more opportunities to recharge, and local authorities can look at ways of doing that. But the government needs to start looking at ways of also making sure the electricity which is produced to fuel it isn't coming from fossil fuels as well. And that's where we need to work with energy companies, and we have to look at ways in which we can make renewables cheaper. The only way in which we do that is by investing in it.
Okay. So, making the government listen to you, how many MPs do you have in Parliament at the moment?
We've got one MP at the moment,
yep.
and I think that's hopefully a number that we're going to see increasing, and we're doing very well in a number of constituencies, and so I know the next time I come and speak to you, I have no question that number is going to be higher. I'd like to add my name next to one of those numbers. And even if it's not at this time, I'm still going to be here looking to get elected to Parliament afterwards.
Okay. Is there any countries in the world where the Green MPs or a Green Party has a major political stake?
Well, I mean, in Germany and in the Netherlands, we do have much more political representation.
Yeah.
But again, we have to think about the journey of this. I mean, where the Green Party have come about. We talk about the issue of climate change. Now, climate change was only really talked about in its modern sense in relation to CO2 emissions since the 1970s. So it's a very modern phenomenon, and there's been lots of discrediting of climate change, and it's taken a long time for governments and voters to actually come to a point where they recognise that this is a serious issue. And so our role in pushing that forwards is going to be very important in the future. But that's not the only thing that we're about. We are also talking about social justice, and we're also talking about local business. And we know that globalisation doesn't just produce more greenhouse gases, it marginalises groups of people, it moves labour around the country. In terms of people who work, I'm not talking about the political party. It seems to have taken them less off the political spectrum around the country. But it is important that we're there talking about social justice. How do we support local businesses? How do we support local economies and communities as well?
Max, I think our time's coming up to an end now.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give you a chance to have a little summary for a few seconds, and why to the camera why you should be voted in and why your party should be voted in.
Well, I'd like to say to everyone who is out there. I mean, today we've seen Donald Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. I think now it's become more important than ever that people do recognise the need for a change in politics, not just in terms of what we're trying to achieve, but the way in which we go about doing it, a respectful way of doing it, and a way which accepts and acknowledges everyone's needs on this planet and the needs of people in the future.
Thanks for your time, Max. And please don't forget to vote on Thursday the 8th of June. Every vote counts, whichever party it's going towards. And thank you for watching the Politics Show, and goodbye.